About learning. I should have the base of English and for Shlema. I feel nothing. I'm sorry. Okay, we're going to start today Zion on the base, and we're holding 8 lines from the bottom. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. It goes like this. We just had a statement before. Well, actually, we had a Abaya listing a whole bunch of 8, to be specific, 8 Tanoim that hold that a sukkah needs to be a diras keva. One of them was Acherim. And Acherim said that a round sukkah is not acceptable. It doesn't look like a permanent structure. I don't know what it is. It's not a permanent structure, and the sukkah is supposed to be permanent, according to these 8 opinions. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, Sukkah asiyah kikivshan, the sukkah that's made like an oven, if the circumference of this sukkah can seat 24 people, the circumference, in the perimeter of the sukkah, you could sit 24 people in the inside, and the sukkah is built around them. So then it's going to be kosher. That's what Rabbi Yochanan says. So the first thing is that he obviously doesn't follow the shita of Reb Meir that a round sukkah is possible. But we're surprised not about that. We're surprised about his measurement because it's very large. What shita is he going like that says that you have to be able to surround 24 people? Surround 24 people in the sukkah. It says command. Who would that go like? Who holds that a sukkah needs to be that large? Like the sukkah could be 7 by 7 tvachim, maybe 4 amos by 4 amos according to Rebbe. So it says, well, the largest that we have of a sheer sukkah is Rebbe. It says Kerebbe. Damar kol sukkah shein barba amos al arba amos psula. He says the sukkah needs to be 4 by 4 amos, a square, 4 by 4 amos. Now comes along Rabbi Yochanan and it says that a round sukkah needs to be able. They were on 70, really towards the very end. Come back like one page. No, yeah, right on the bottom there. So he's saying that a sukkah needs to be 24 amos. So the largest shear that we could have for a sukkah is 4 by 4. It says michdi. Let's see. Now that Gavra ba'amsa Yasiv, how much space does a person take up? 1 amma. He sits in 1 amma. It's like his chair. It's like 1 amma. So he's sitting in the sukkah. 24 people sitting around. So it's 24 ammas over circumference. Kol sheyesh be'kefer shleisha tvachim, yesh be'rechav techa. Any circle, any circumference of 3 has a diameter of 1. Right? Simplified pi. Right. Well, here he's not telling you that you have to be able to eat in the sukkah. He's just telling you how many people it could fit. So it's basically that if it's 24 people in circumference, so the diameter would be 8. Now, we're a little surprised by this because we said that our diameter was 4. I'm skipping one fine point there, but we said that it's 4. The diameter is 4. Why? Because 4 by 4. Okay. So, 1 second. If you're following the sheet of Rebbe, why are you telling me that it should be a circumference of 24? 4 times 3 is only 12. Betracer Sagi, 12 people for 12 amas, same thing. 12 people at 12 amas should be enough. Why are you telling me 24? It's mamish double. It's way too big. The Gemara says, 1 second. You see, really, we just pulled a fast one. We did not explain it perfectly. We said, we made it look like a plus sign, like a 4 by 4. So we said that it's 4 in diameter. So that's going to be 12. 4 in diameter is going to be 12, yeah. Because if you have a diameter of a circle, so times 3 is going to be the circle. And we're dealing with the circle. The only thing is, Rebbe Sukka was not a diameter of 4. Rebbe Sukka was a square of 4. The diameter is just in the center. But we need 4 on each side. So it's 4 by 4 by 4 by 4. We just went like straight down the middle, 4. But what about all those corners? It says, Hani mili bigula. You were telling me, we were looking at a circle thinking that a diameter of the circle is going to give me Rebbe Sukka. And then we were left with, it should be only 12. But really, Rebbe wanted a square. So aval beribua by trade. But if it's going to be a square inside a circle, we didn't do the square inside the circle. First, let's do. But for a square, just to make a square, it's going to be more. It says michti. 1 second. Kama meruba yisrael eagle. How much is a square bigger than a circle? It's very simple. It's very simple. Because if the circle has a diameter of 1, so it has a circumference of 3. But the square that has a perimeter on one side of 1 is going to have a perimeter of 4. So it's 1/4 larger, right? One diameter, a diameter of 1 is going to be a circumference of 3.14, whatever. But a square is going to be 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. It's going to be 4. So it's a quarter more. So kama meruba yisrael eagle. How much is a square bigger than a circle? Revia. It's a quarter. Okay, so b'shitzer sagi. So why are you telling me that it needs to be 24? I know, granted, it's not 12, but 16, because Rebbe says a sukkah needs to be 4 by 4. So 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, all around the sides, the perimeter is 16, right? 4 times 4. The Gemara says 1 second, but now you're giving me a square. Rabbi Yechanan was talking about a circle. So hani mili be'igel denafik megay ribua. That would be a circle that's inside the square. Aval ribua, skip the word denafik. Aval ribua megay yigula. But the square that's in a circle, by tvei, that's going to be more. So granted, a square of 4 by 4 is going to have a perimeter of 16. Okay, but now I make a circle around the square. So how do I figure out what the what's the diameter? You want to say that? How do I figure out what's the diameter of the circle that goes around the square? So it's very simple, because if you look at the Gemara has a picture. There's you see the corners touch the circle. The corners touch the circle. So what I need to do is from corner to corner, catty corner, that would be the diameter. So if I have a square, I make it into, like, let's say, well, in math we would do it. The easy way would be the hypotenuse of the triangle, the longer side of the legs. The hypotenuse is supposed to be, according to the Gemara, it's 2/5 longer than the sides. Just to make it simple, if the sides are 5, then 2/5 long would be 7. Let's say the sides are 5, so 2/5 would be 7. How does it work in math? You do a squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? So let's say the sides were 5. So it's 5 squared is 25, plus 5 squared, which is 25, is 50. And then c squared would be the square root of 50 would be 7. It's basically the same thing, 7 point something, right? So 2/5. The diagonal of a square, the hypotenuse of the triangle is 2/5 the side. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take Rebbe's Sukkah, which is a 4x4. We're going to figure out the hypotenuse of a 4x4. And then we're going to times it by 3. And what's that going to give me? So we have to get 2/5. So each 4, let's do it like this. Each one of the 4 is, instead of being 1, is 1.4. 1.4, because 2/5. Each 5th is 0.2, right? So 2/5 is 0.4. Right? Okay, so I have to get 4 times 0.4, because each amma is an extra 0.4 for its diagonal, for its hypotenuse, which means I have an extra 16, right? An extra 16, which comes out 1.6. So instead of being a square of 4x4, what I'm looking at now is the hypotenuse, which is 5.6. So yeah, you're looking at the Taisvis. Okay. Yeah, that's maybe something else. One second, Maisha, I can't hear you.
That shows it gives you the 24th. It made it into a square, so it's 9 by 9 by 9 by 9.
So here what we're doing is we have a 4x4, and we're looking at what's the diagonal from corner to corner. We said the diagonal of from corner to corner is going to be 5.6. Want to do this in the way the Gemara would do it? It's going to be 5 and 3/5. That's what the Gemara calls it. 5 and 3/5. Yeah, that makes sense. 5 and 3/5. Now we have to get the circle of a diameter, the circumference, with a diameter of 5 and 3/5. So it's not difficult. If it would just be 5, so it would be 15, because 5 times 3. And now 3/5 times 3 would be 9/5, right? That would be 1 and 4/5. So it's 15 plus 1 is 16 and 4/5. Basically 17 minus 1/5. That would be my circle. If I started from 5.6, I'm going to be 16.8. Basically just about 17, 16.8, which is 16 and 4/5. The Gemara calls it 17 minus a 5. It looks like this. Trying to figure out if I get a circle. Yeah, the problem is Rabbi Yochanan said that a circular sukkah is going to have a circumference of 24 amas. He didn't actually say that. He said a circular sukkah is going to be able to fit 24 people. It's going to be 24 people sitting around. We're thinking what that means is that it's going to be 24 amas in circumference. 24 amas in circumference is going to give me a diameter of 8. So far, the largest sukkah that we have is a sukkah of Rebbe, which is 4x4, which gives me a diameter of 5.6, which gives me a circumference of 17 minus a 5th. So what we're looking at is a huge discrepancy between Rabbi Yochanan's sukkah and the sukkah that we know of, which should be the Shem. So Mishum Morsha the Kanasa, because you have the protrusion of the corners. Michti. Kol amsa beribua, every square amma, amsa v'trefum shibalachseina, is an amma in 2/5 in its diagonal. We did this outside, we'll just read it through. B'shiv sarnaki chumsha sagi, 17 minus a 5th, it should be enough. Why are you telling me it needs to be 24 ammas? Umar says leidak. It wasn't exact. He rounded it off. From 17 minus the 5th, he rounded it off to 24. This is not going to work in business. He says, you say you round it off like that, such a large amount? Okay, you round it off to 17. But to round it off to 24, make it 100. That's not going to work. It's okay. Amalei Mark Shisha Breder of Chizbala Ravashi. Mark Shisha, the son of Rav Chizda, says to Ravashi. Rav Chizda had 2 sons, Mar Yinuk and Mar Kashisha. the young one and the old one. Although according to some opinions, the old one was actually much younger than the young one. And the reason is because Makshisha, he was called Makshisha because he was born when Kshish means old, when Rav Chisda was old. That's why he's young. And Mar Yenuka was when Rav Chisda was young. So it's hard to imagine that when he was young, he had a child that got named Young, not knowing yet that he would have a child when he was older. So anyway, whatever. His comment was like this. Misavris Gavra Bamsa Yosef. All of this is an assumption. Rabbi Yechon never said how big the sukkah needs to be in Amos. He said how big it needs to be in people. Now, how many people? 24 people. So we said each person is 24. Each person is one Amma. Turns out, he says, plus a Gavri, Betarti Amsa Yosfi. Really, 3 people take up 2 Ammas. So in other words, we could drop 1/3 in Ammas. So if I have 24 people would only take up 16 Ammas. Now, 16 Ammas in circumference, what would be about 5 Ammas square, which is pretty close. Pretty close. What did we say before that we needed? 16.8. He's saying that you only need 16, according to this. So he says, Kama Havilu, how much would it be in the circumference of the sukkah? If it would be every 3 people took up 2 amas, it would be shitzar. It would be 16. Anan shivzar nakichum shabinan. But we need 16.8. We need 17 minus a fifth. Naki means take off. Minus 17 minus a fifth. The Gemara says, "Oh, don't worry, layduck. That's very close. Layduck. It wasn't exact. It was a round number. So instead of 16.8, it was 16." It says, I can understand if you're going to round it off to be more strict, but Lakulam Yaminan Layduck, is it going to round it off to the lowest measurement, not to the Yaitza? Round it off to the higher one, so that you'll for sure have a shear. You can't round it off to the lower one, right? Amale Ravasi le Ravashi. Ravasi says to Ravashi, La'ilam Gabra Bamsi Yosef. Want to know something? Go back to the original. Every person takes up 1 amma. So it's going to be 24 ammas. However, for Rabbi Yochanan Makam Gabri like Kachashu, all of this was based on an assumption that these people, 24 people, were sitting inside the sukkah. Turns out that Rabbi Yochanan meant that these people are sitting outside the sukkah. Now, if they're sitting outside the sukkah, so let's say I make a diameter. What was our diameter of 24 people? 24 in circumference would be a diameter of 8. 8 times 3 is 24. But it turns out that the sukkah walls are within the people. So my diameter, let's say I had 8 people. So I have to cut off, they're actually outside. So I have to cut off 1 on this side because the wall is going right behind them. And 1 on this side because the wall is going right behind him, not outside of him. And so instead of a diameter of 8, I have a diameter of 6. Now, a diameter of 6 is times 3, that's going to be 18. So Rabbi Yochanan said my sukkah needs to be 18. How much did we need? 16.8. So it says Kama Havilu. What would that be? Kam Nisrei. That would be only 18. So instead of 24, which we thought originally, really Rabbi Yochanan said the sukkah needs to be 18 amas in circumference. And what he meant was he wanted to cover the basis that it should be at least 16.8. The Gemara says B'shiv Sanaki Chum Shasagi. So what about? But it said it only needs to be 17 minus fifth. It says Hainu the Laydak. Yeah, Rabbi Yochanan wasn't precise, so L'chumra Laydak, but he wasn't precise to be a little more strict. We got it. We have the pshat. Around sukkah, according to Rabbi Yochanan, was following the opinion of Rabbi, needs to be 18 amas around, which is 16 amas, which is 6 amas across. He said 24 people. That was his statement, 24 people. But why did he say that? because for him, 24 people meant that within the 24 people, there would be a circumference of 18 amas. Yeah, why do you have to do that? I don't know. You're allowed to do. Yeah, at least based on what the notes over here seem that it's allowed. I'm sorry? Yeah, you want to try it? Yeah, they had some sort of oven, a kipshon, that was around. It was made in the shape of that kipshon, that furnace. Okay, so far so good. It wasn't so complicated. There it goes. By the way, if you look at these pictures in Tosfos has interesting ways of telling you how to measure a circle. If you cut a circle down halfway, and then you spread it out, and then you cut that in half and you put it together, you'll have a rectangle, and then you can figure out. See what he did? Cuts it down halfway, the radius. Then he spreads it out like that. And then you cut it in half, you put it together, you get a rectangle, you can figure out. Yeah. Okay. Rabbanan the Kisri, Vamla Dayani the Kisri Amri. Either the rabbis of Kisri or the judges of Kisri, they said like this. Igula denafik migari buas Rebbe, you're right. If I have a circle inside a square, so the square is going to be 1/4 more than the circle. We explain this very simple. That if the circle has a diameter of 1, the circumference is going to be 3. But a diameter of 1, but a 1 by 1 square is going to have a perimeter of 4. So 4 to 3, it's 1/4 more. 1/4 more. However, Rebua denafik migoyi gula, but a square that's inside a circle, palga, is going to be half. Okay. So how's this going to work? Wants to say like this, that the circle that goes around the square, instead of being a diameter from corner to corner, well, the diameter was from corner to corner, right? The hypotenuse would be the new diameter of this circle. We said was 2/5 more than the side. They say that it's actually half more than the sides. They don't ask me to spell it. It's half more than the sides. So that would mean like this, that if my square was 16, because it was a 4x4. Then they would want the circle that surrounds the square to be half more than 16, which is 24. The circumference is going to be 24. So you say, you know what? You have a sukkah that's 4x4. That's a total of a perimeter of 16. So it turns out that according to Rabbanan B'Kisri that have this interesting sort of math, the circle that goes around that is going to be 24. I'll explain in a second. Umar says, Valahi, that's clearly not so. You take a look, it's not so. So the way this is understood is like this. What are the Rabbanan B'Kisri doing? What was our diameter of a 4x4 sukkah? Said it was 5.6. That would be the diameter. We were looking for the circumference. So we said the circumference is 5.6 times 3. And that gave us 16.8, which is 17 minus a fifth. And that was our question. How does it match with 24? Rabbanan and Kisri are discussing the area. Now, to get the area, what you have to do is you do the radius squared. So the diameter is 5.6. Half the diameter is the radius. The radius would be 2.8. Yeah, it would be 2.8. 56 would be 28, right? So 2.8. 2.8 squared is going to be 2.8 times 2.8. It's going to be 7.84. If you times that by 3, it's going to give you approximately 24. When you look for the area, so they're right. When they look for the area, you're right. But we're not looking for the area. We're looking for the circumference, the perimeter, not the area. So Taisus asks on Rashi, so what are you mixing the area with the circumference? How does that have anything? Okay, that's the Gemara. Amr Ablevi Mishum Reb Meir. Yeah. You have a question from the why are we even quoting them? It says it's either the rabbis or the judges. Now they're not wrong. They're not wrong because they're actually getting the area. But in relationship to us, what we're looking for is the circumference. It's totally off. Like to get the area, you have to do the radius squared, right? And to get the circumference, I don't know why they made it so complicated. The radius, you do the diameter, right? The diameter times 3, 3.14. Amar Reb Levi Mishum Reb Meir. Reb Levi says in the name of Reb Meir, they Sukkas Shel Yetzer. There used to be these people that made pots, earthenware pots. So they would have their huts. In the inner hut, they would live. And in the outer hut, they would sell their wares. They would sell their the utensils that they made. Only thing they have similar to this today, I think, is like these palm readers and these tarot card stuff. So they have like a little shop. I don't know if they make any money, but they live in the back. So they sukkah shel yaitzim. They have these guys. They have two sukkahs, one in the front and one in the back. Zuluf nimisu. Hapnimis in a sukkah. The one that they live in, even though they live in huts, so it really has a roof that's like a sukkah roof. But it's not a kosher sukkah. And it's also chayavis b'mezuzah because they live there all year. Now Rashi says it's not a good sukkah because it's not recognizable that they're there for sukkahs because they live there all year. I know they have the right schach, but for some reason, probably a rabbinic reason, it has to be recognizable that you're in a sukkah and not that this is your house, the whole year house. You have to go and do something different for sukkahs. This is just a regular house. It's not a good sukkah. Now, a sukkah doesn't need to be built l'shem sukkah, as you're going to see. But nevertheless, because they live there all year, it's not kosher. It seems like it's a rabbinic decree. It's chayav b'mezuzah. And chitzayna is a sukkah. If they would move into their outer store, that would be a kosher sukkah. And peturim in a mezuzah, but it's exempt from mezuzah because it's not, the outer store gets remodeled, gets remade based on whatever their needs are, what they're selling. The inner one stays more permanent, the outer one gets redone. So the Gemara asks 1 second, Ba'amai, why is the outer one exempt from mezuzah? The gateway to a permanent structure is chayav b'mezuzah. Even if it's just a hallway. You say, well, it's not really a room. It's just a hallway. Well, so what? It's an entranceway to a large room, which that is the permanent room. So over here, even though the front entrance, the front sukkah, is they're stored. It's not permanent, but it's the entrance to what is permanent, which is the back room, which is their house. As an entranceway, a beis shar, it should be chayv mezuzah. The Gemara answers mishum delei kviya. Machlekes Rishonim, what this means. It's not permanent. Rashi learns that the inner house is not permanent enough that it could actually have an outer house that's an entranceway to a house that's not permanent enough. Like the inner house isn't, a regular entranceway to a house or to a courtyard is chayav b'mezuzah, but that's because the courtyard in the house is permanent. But over here, it's a sukkah that moves from time to time. So, and now you're making an entranceway to something that's not even permanent. We say that that's not good enough to. Yeah, but they do move around. Taner Rabbanan was taught in a brisa. We're going to have two brises now, and the brises are going to teach us that a sukkah does not need. Wait for the next mission. Sukkah Yeshana. There's a little difference. That sukkah is built as a house. Come sukkahs, you say, hey, what do you know? I have the perfect truth. If someone builds a sukkah for a sukkah, but by Hanukkah time, doesn't take the schach down. Pesach time, it's up already. It's on the sukkah, so I'm going to leave it up. So he built it for sukkahs. It's different. We'll see in the next one. Okay, we're going to learn two brises. They're going to have Rashi Tevot, and it's going to teach us that different types of sukkahs are kosher, even though they weren't built for the sake of a sukkah, and even though the people weren't necessarily chayav in sukkahs, it's still going to be good. The reason is because they built it for shade, which is the purpose of a sukkah, is to be shade from the sun, not for sneas, not for storage. All of those things would make the sukkah invalid. It has to be built for shade or for the mitzvah. Okay. Taner Rabbanan was taught in the brisa. Ganvach. That's a Rashi Tevis. You see the apostrophes. Sukkas Goyim, Sukkas Nashim, Sukkas Behema, Sukkas Kutim. Let's go back and look at the word. Gimel, for the Ganvach, is Sukkas Goyim. If a non-Jew built a sukkah, the Nun is Sukkas Nashim, the Beis is Sukkas Behema. It was built for animals. And Sukkas Kutim if it was built by Kutim. There's a chiddush here, Kutim, even though Kutim we're considering non-Jewish. Kutim are the Samaritans. They converted, but we didn't accept their conversion. And even if we did accept it at a certain point, they lost it because they were worshiping idols, and there was a question about their whole conversion. So all of those sukkahs, sukkah mikol makim, or any sort of sukkah, is all kosher. It's all kosher. Bulvad, with as long as shetei mesucheches kilchasa, if it has proper schach. My kilchasa, what does it mean proper? Amar Rav Chisda v'usha aseh l'tzel sukkah. As long as it was made for shade, the sukkah was made for shade, that's going to be acceptable. That means that it can't be made for modesty. Let's say a cabana or something. It has to be made for shade. And the schach is there for shade. No, as long as it's made for shade of the sukkah, then that's going to be kosher, even if it wasn't made for the mitzvah of sukkah. Now, these people don't they don't have any mitzvahs of sukkah. They're just making it for shade, and it's going to be acceptable because it's made for shade. Why do you add in any sort of sukkah? Oh, it's coming to add in something else. Besides for this, the bigger chiddush. Sukkah's rakvash. It's coming to include a rakvash. You will see what that is in a minute. The Taner Rabbanan, starting the brisa. Sukkah's rakvash. What is rakvash? So another Rashi Tevis. Sukkah's rayim. Shepherds build a sukkah. Talking about Jewish shepherds. Sukkah's kaitzim. Kaitzim are people that they dry figs. They have to watch them in the field as they dry, no one should take them. So they spread them out. They build a hut to protect them from the sun. Sukkas Borganin, this is a hut that watches fields. The person wants to have a little shade when he's watching the fields, so he builds this hut. We had Borganin once before in this Masechta when we spoke about that. It could make a join. It could join two cities together. He said Borganin could join, but a small house couldn't. Sukkah Shemri Pedus. You're right. Rashi says Shemri here. Let me see what Rashi said before. Shemri Pedus. Rashi says before Shemri Pedus. Yeah, I don't know why it switches, but you're right. Basavdi says it's watching the city. Before we translate it as watching fruits like fields. Here we say it's city watchman. So Sukkah Shemre, hey, that's why, because I have Shemre Peres already. So it must be it's right. Sukkah Shemre Peres. Sukkah, that's where Rashi switches the pshat. Sukkah of people that are watching fruits. Sukkah mikal makim, or any sort of sukkah. All of those are kshera. As long as it has proper schach. Yeah. So the Gemara is going to ask. My kel chasa. What does it mean? It's done properly. As long as it's done for shade. Where it says mikal makim lasayimai. Why did you say or any sort of sukkah is kosher? It says lasay sukkah ganvach. It's coming to include the sukkah ganvach, which was the first price that we said. Goyim, Nashim, Behema, and Kutim. So the Gemara explains like this. We have two brises. Each one concludes with, or any sort of sukkah, which is including the other brisa. The Gemara says like this. Hi Tana, the Ganvach, the brisa, the Tana that taught the brisa of Ganvach, which was the non-Jew sukkah, that was Alimale Ganvach. It thought that Ganvach is more stronger, more kosher. Mishum Dekvi, because those are more permanent. And those are more substantial sukkahs. Why is Kvi better? I thought it was more permanent should be better. It doesn't say why that should be better. Because Mikal Makim Lasi Rakvash, and it wants to tell me a chiddush that Rakvash, which is less permanent, is also kosher. The like Kvi. V'haitana de Rakvash. And what about the other brisa that taught Rakvash, which is the Jewish people that are workers or whatever? Alimale Rakvash. For him, he thought that it would be more obvious Rakvash should be kosher. The Bnei Chiyuvaninu, because all of those are Jewish people and they're building a sukkah. So if it's built by someone that's obligated in sukkah, that should be kosher. But it teaches Mikal Makam to include the other sukkah, the La Bnei Chiyuvaninu, which are not obligated. That's a even bigger chiddush. So in other words, what was stronger to him, what was more obvious to him, was the one that are obligated in the sukkah. That's kosher. But it comes to him. By the way, any sort of sukkah is kosher, even those sukkahs of people that are built by people that aren't chayav in the sukkah. Okay. Go on? Yeah, let's go on because we're going to fall behind a little bit because of Shabbos and Tisha B'Av. Yeah, I mean, we can't learn in the morning. So the question is if we can learn at night. Let's see how far we can get. Maybe it won't be necessary. Okay. Moshe, how do you pronounce this? Sukkah Yeshana? Yeshana. An old sukkah. An old sukkah. Beishamai Paislin. Beishamai says it's no good. Beisil Machshin. Beisil says, oh, it's no problem. Be'izu Sukkah Yeshana. Right away we ask, what's considered an old sukkah? Kol Shasa Kaidam L'chag Shleishim Yom. If it's made 30 days before the holiday. When's the holiday? The 15th of Tishrei. 30 days before would be the 15th of Elul. So if you make it before the holiday, it's an old sukkah. But if you make it for the sake of the holiday, we don't care when you made it. Afilu Metchilas Hashana, even if you made it from the previous year, that's going to be kosher. That's kosher. So, what's the pshat of 30 days? Rashi says, because 30 days before the holiday, you start to study the halachas of the holiday. And you ask the shayolim b'hilchas hachag, in this discussion over there, that 30 days before the holiday, and on the holiday itself, you discuss the holiday. So 30 days before, if you made a sukkah, even if it was made stam, without any intention, but it was probably has some sort of sukkah in mind, and we accepted it. Because Beis Shammai holds that a sukkah needs to be made lishma, for the sake of the mitzvah. Beis Hillel says it doesn't need to be made lishma. So Beis Shammai says if it's made within 30 days, then it's probably made lishma. More than that, then you weren't thinking about sukkahs. Okay. Taisus has a question here. Well, he doesn't ask it, but he avoids it. Why is the Mishnah telling me, but if you make it for the holiday, even at the beginning of the year, who cares? I pass him like Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel says it doesn't matter when you make it. It doesn't need to be made lishma. What are you telling me that if you made it from the beginning of the year, Beis Shammai is going to accept it? You're coming to teach me halachas for Beis Shammai? You don't have to elaborate on Beis Shammai. Quotes a Yerushalmi that says that even according to Beis Hillel, tzarech l'chadash b'davar, you're supposed to do something. Even if you didn't make it, it's still kosher, but you're supposed to add a little bit to the sukkah. So what we're saying is here is that you don't have to do that little adjustment to the sukkah, l'shem chag. If you made the sukkah l'shem chag, even according to Beis Hillel, there's a chiddush. Okay. My time at the Beis Shammai. What's the reason for Beis Shammai? Yom HaKra. The pasuk says, Chag HaSukkah Shivas Yom LaHashem. Holiday of Sukkot, you make 7 days for Hashem. So we adjust the pasuk like this. We say, Sukkah Ha'asuya L'Shem Chag Be'inan. We say Sukkah LaHashem. Sukkah for Hashem. That means it needs to be made for the sake of Hashem, for the commandment of Hashem. That's what they learn. It says the holiday of Sukkot is 7 days for Hashem. They learn it that the sukkah needs to be made for the sake of the mitzvah. Beis Hillel, what does Beis Hillel say? Ahumi bayale like the Rav Sheshes. Says that pasuk I already used for something else. And I don't have a source that a sukkah needs to be made lishma because I used that pasuk. I had one pasuk to spend and I spent it. You can't tell me that it's coming to teach me something else. The Amar Rav Sheshes Mishum Rabbi Akiva. Yeah, there's a big gap in generations there. How did Rav Sheshes say in the name of Rabbi Akiva? So Mishum doesn't mean that he heard from him. Mishum means he heard in the name of him. Mishum is like Mishem, in the name of him. But he didn't hear it directly. Minayin Latzi Sukkah Shasurim Kol Shiva. You're not allowed to use the wood of the sukkah for all 7 days of sukkahs. Let's say, I don't know, some wood fell off. You're making a barbecue, so you want to use it for firewood. You're not allowed to use it. Talmud Laimar, how do you know you're not allowed to use it? It says Chag HaSukkah Shivas Yom LaHashem. It's a holiday of Sukkot, 7 days for Hashem. Vitanyan was taught in a brisa. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira taught. Actually, let's stop 1 second. Chag HaSukkah Shivas Yom LaHashem tells me that the sukkah gets some sanctity, which I'm not allowed to use for personal use once Sukkot begins. And I have another brisa that says, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says, he lived in Netivin, right? He was the one that he sent the convert to get the fat tail of the Korban Pesach, not the convert. He sent the non-Jew to get the fat tail of the Pesach. This non-Jew said, I eat from the Korban Pesach. I go there and I don't say that I'm not Jewish. He says, ask them for the tail. So they said, who told you to ask for the tail? He says, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. He said, no, something's funny over here. The fat tail gets burned. Because they started to examine, they show me your passport. They found out that he wasn't, it was just for the Kiddush. Right? JFK, just for Kiddush. Yeah. The walls don't matter. It says, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says, Kshem shechal shem shemayim al chagiga. just like the name of Hashem goes on the Karban Chagiga. Karban Chagiga is a sacrifice that's brought. Now, until it's brought, you're not allowed to use it. Once it's brought, then you eat it. But before it's brought, it gets sanctified. Once it's brought, you sprinkle the blood, you offer up the inner, then afterwards it gets eaten. But until then, it's considered sanctified. Just like you can't make personal use of the Chagiga, you can't make personal use of the Sukkah. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Chag Sukkah Shivas Yom La Hashem, a holiday of Sukkah 7 days for Hashem, and we have the word Chag there. Ma Chag La Hashem, just like the Chag, the Chagiga, is sanctified to Hashem. Av Sukkah La Hashem, also the Sukkah for Hashem. So basically, Beis Hillel told us that I'm learning a halacha from the pasuk Chag Sukkah Shivas Yom La Hashem that I can't make use of the wood of a sukkah, the whole sukkahs. You're telling me that it's teaching us that you have to make a sukkah l'shem Hashem for the sake of the mitzvah. But I already used the pasuk to teach me something else. So for me, Beis Hillel says the sukkah doesn't need to be made l'shma. Beis Shammai, the Gemara says, what about Beis Shammai? You're allowed to use the wood of a sukkah. They use the pasuk to tell me the sukkah needs to be built l'shma for the sake of the mitzvah. How do you know that you're not allowed to use the sukkah? So Beis Shammai nami mi bay leila hachi. Beis Shammai needs the pasuk to teach me that the sukkah is forbidden for personal use. The Gemara says, "Einachanami." You're right. Okay, so we lost the pasuk. Elamai taimai de Beis Shammai. So what's the reason for Beis Shammai? Ksiv krachrina. We have another pasuk for Beis Shammai. It says, "Chag sukkah tasal l'chashivas yamim." Make a sukkah for 7 days. Sukkah ha'asuy l'shem chag beinan. Here you rearrange the words of the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Holiday of Sukkot make for you 7 days." What Beis Shammai is doing to the pasuk is they're saying, "Chag Sukkah tasa l'chag." Make the sukkah for the holiday instead of holiday of Sukkah. Make sukkah for holiday. So the sukkah needs to be made for. You splice the pasuk. Okay. Beis Hillel, what does Beis Hillel do with that pasuk? It's an extra pasuk. Make the sukkah for 7 days. Beis Hillel holds that you're allowed to make a sukkah on Chol Hamoed. You go to an amusement park or some other park, you have a pop-up sukkah. You're allowed to make a sukkah on Chol Hamoed. Beis Shammai Svirlu, what is Beis Shammai? In other words, the whole Shivas Yamim you're allowed to make a sukkah. Beis Shammai used the pasuk to tell me that you have to make a sukkah for the sake of sukkahs. It needs to be made lishma. Beis Hillel says that pasuk tells me you can build a sukkah the entire sukkahs. Beis Shammai, are you allowed to build a sukkah the whole sukkahs? Sfir look Rabbi Eliezer, they hold like Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer in general has very unique opinions. Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenes. At one point, his opinion, he ended up in Cherem because his opinion, he refused to budge from his opinion in the Tanner by the oven. But over here he holds Damar, he holds that you're not allowed to make a sukkah Chol Hamoed. He holds you're not supposed to eat in someone else's sukkah. He has very unique opinions in sukkahs. He says the sukkah needs to be made for sukkahs, and then you go inside and don't leave, basically. No sukkah happen. But the sukkah needs to be, that's your sukkah, and you have to, and Beis Shammai follows that. Actually, Rabbi Eliezer is considered Shamuti as a follower of Beis Shammai, because Rabbi Eliezer is one of the 5 students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And as one of those students, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is Kibel mi Hillel v'Shammai. He was a student of Hillel and Shammai. So Rabbi Eliezer got from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai the Shammai side of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, because Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai learned by both. He accepted that. Okay, and so Rabbi Eliezer and Beis Shammai over here hold the same thing, that you can't make a sukkah on Chol Hamoed. Beis Hillel, actually, let's stop right there, Beis Hillel. Let's stop right there. Okay. Have a good day.
Yom Tov.